In the year 1819, the Franciscan Empire, ruled by Emperor Francois III from the gilded halls of Château d'Aurélien, teetered on the edge of ruin. Wars had drained its treasuries, and enemies circled like wolves. Yet the court still glittered. Balls, operas, whispered alliances sealed with wine and lies. Princess Eleanor was 19, radiant and untouchable. She moved through the palace like moonlight on water, graceful, distant, kind to everyone, but close to no one. Her father had raised her to be the empire's greatest asset, beautiful, educated, and obedient. Captain Julien Moreau had no beauty, no title, only scars and a soldier's pay. He had risen through the ranks by sheer ferocity in battle. 3 years earlier, after the victory at Montclair, his regiment marched into the capital. The princess visited the wounded in the hospital tents. She stopped at Julien's cot, pressed a white rose into his bandaged hand, and said softly, "The Empire thanks you, Captain." Her fingers brushed his for an instant. That was all, but it was enough. From that day, Julien carried the dried rose in a leather pouch against his heart. He volunteered for every palace guard rotation, standing motionless in corridors just to glimpse her passing. He learned her habits, the hour she walked in the rose garden, the window of her apartments that caught the morning light, the melody she hummed while reading. He never spoke to her again. A common soldier did not address the emperor's daughter. Yet in the long nights on campaign, he wrote letters he burned at dawn pages confessing everything he could never say. Incident 1, the masquerade in the spring of 1820, the court held a grand masquerade to celebrate a minor victory. Even officers of lower rank were invited. Julien attended in plain black domino, his face half hidden by a silver mask. Eleanor wore a gown of midnight blue, her mask a delicate filigree of stars. She danced with dukes and princes, but grew weary of their flattery. Seeking air, she slipped onto a shadowed balcony. Julien was there on guard duty. Moonlight caught the silver of his mask. "You are very still, Captain," she said, recognizing the posture even in costume. "Do the shadows suit you better than the ballroom?" He bowed stiffly. "Duty suits me, Your Highness," she laughed lightly. "Duty is a cold companion. Tell me, do you ever dance?" "Only with death on the battlefield, Highness." A pause. Then, impulsively, "Dance with me now. No one will know." He hesitated, every rule screaming in his head. But she extended her gloved hand. They danced in silence on the balcony, her steps light, his careful and restrained. When the music ended, she whispered, "Thank you for your service and for this moment." She pressed a second white rose into his palm and vanished into the lights. That night, Julien did not burn his letter. He kept it. Months later, Julien's regiment was ordered east to crush a rebellion. Before departing, he left an unsigned letter in the palace rose garden, tucked beneath the bench she favored. It contained only a pressed white rose and a single line, "I would die 1,000 times to keep you safe." He did not expect her to find it, but she did. When his regiment returned bloodied but victorious, Eleanor sought him out in the hospital courtyard. She wore a hooded cloak for discretion. "I found your gift," she said quietly. "It was beautiful and sad." Julien could barely speak. "It was nothing, Highness." "It was everything to someone who receives only duty in politics," she hesitated. "Be careful in the next campaign, Captain. The Empire needs men like you." She left before he could answer. For the first time, hope dangerous, impossible hope took root in his chest. When Emperor Francois announced Eleanor's betrothal to Prince Harold of Aldria, the court rejoiced. The alliance would bring fresh armies and gold. Only Julien felt the world collapse. He was on duty the night the emperor privately informed his daughter. From the corridor, Julien heard raised voices, hers pleading, her father's implacable. "It is decided. You will do your duty." Later, Eleanor walked alone in the moonlit garden. Julien, unable to stay away, followed at a distance. She stopped beneath the rose arbor and wept silently. He stepped forward without thinking. "Highness," she startled, then recognized him. Captain Moreau, a bitter smile. "You heard." "I could not help it." She wiped her eyes. "He says it is for the Empire, that love is a luxury we cannot afford." She looked at him fully. "Do you believe that?" "No," he said, voice rough. "I believe some things are worth more than empires." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, regret perhaps, or recognition. Then the mask returned. "Good night, Captain." She left him standing among the roses, the scent choking him. Incident 4. The fortress. The wedding came and went in splendor. Julien held the fort through siege after siege. But every dispatch from the capital brought fresh torment. Eleanor had accompanied her husband to the Aldrian front. Prince Harold treated her with cold courtesy. Reinforcements were promised but delayed, diverted to protect Aldrian interests. Julian received orders, hold at all costs. On the fourth night of relentless bombardment, fog rolled in thick as wool. Julian walked the battlements alone. He touched the leather pouch at his chest, two dried roses crumbling now. He remembered her tears in the garden, her hand in his on the balcony, the letter she had kept. Then he remembered her father's voice, "You will do your duty." At dawn, he ordered the postern gate opened. Coalition troops poured through. His men fought bravely, believing it a last stand. Julian fought beside them until the end, taking a wound to the shoulder that would scar but not kill. He walked out carrying the muddied imperial standard, surrendered it personally to the coalition commander, and vanished into the chaos. Emperor Francois rode out with his last guards and died on the field outside Aurelian, bayoneted by an unseen soldier in the melee. Eleanor, widowed when Harold fell earlier, stood on the palace walls as smoke rose over the city. The empire fractured, new flags flew within months. Years later, in a distant port city, a scarred man with graying hair tended a small rose garden. Travelers sometimes heard him speak to the white blooms in a low voice, calling them by a woman's name. He had taken everything from the man who took everything from him, but the roses never answered.